All right, I'm with Kate Barr, everybody. Welcome to Walk-ins Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure to meet you. You come highly referred by our mutual friend, Sarah Rose.
She's just the best. Yeah.
She really is the best. I love her so much. My uncle listens to all my podcasts or most of them, and he absolutely adored the one with her. He was like, "She's so brilliant." I'm like, "Yes,
Like,
she is."
who doesn't think she's brilliant? Whoever
I
that is, I
know.
know them. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You, are doing really she was telling me I had to talk to you because of all of the work you're doing, and it's really interesting to me just because it's something I really want to understand, and I think I could really tweak out on. I have the right kind of, brain to if I had more time, I feel like I'd really tweak out on stuff like this. So can you explain to my audience just who you are and what you do very quickly?
I will do my very best.
It doesn't even have to be quick. I don't know why I said
Thank
that.
goodness. That's why podcasting is great, so that I can ramble for 3 hours.
Mhm.
So I'm Kate Barr. I ran for state senate in North Carolina in 2024, and I ran as Kate Barr Can't Win. So basically, I announced my loss the day that I filed to run for office, and the whole campaign was a protest against gerrymandering. Um, Gerrymandering is basically when the people in power carve up our voting maps in order to preserve their power. And North Carolina is either the most gerrymandered state in the country or one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. Depending on which metrics you're using. And basically, what happens, just from a numbers perspective, is you have a census every 10 years. We all know that document that comes in the mail, and you fill it out. And our Constitution requires a head count of all of the citizens of the United States. And then we are supposed to vote in roughly equally sized voting districts for both the US House of Representatives and for our state legislators. So in North Carolina, we had the census in 2020. They drew some new district lines, and our state Supreme Court took a look at those lines and said, "Oh, it sure looks like you were trying really hard to make sure that pretty much only Republicans get elected." That's gerrymandering.
Mm, okay.
So we got new maps. And in 2022, we sent 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans to the US House of Representatives. So North Carolina is a purple state. Like, basically, every state level election is decided, 50-50, 51-49. It's always right on the edge. So 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans is like appropriate representation for us. Then we lost the state Supreme Court. It became really, really conservative. They chose to rehear this partisan gerrymandering case. And our conservative state Supreme Court basically declared that partisan gerrymandering was allowable under our state constitution. And so we got new voting maps yet again that leaned really heavily Republican. What that looks like is in 2024, we sent 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats to the US House of Representatives, which, folks who are counting at home, you can see that that is exactly the margin by which the Republicans control the US House. So basically, the North Carolina gerrymander delivered the US House of Representatives to the Republican Party. Our state didn't change that much. Like, our purpleness didn't change that much. All that changed between 2022 and 2024 were our voting lines. And so we are now in a place where our districts are drawn to preserve the power of the people in power and to reduce competition. And I think that's really crappy, frankly.
How does that work so that how does it work so that it preserves power in that way?
Yeah. So there are 2 different ways that you can draw district lines to preserve power. Basically, the foundation is these like very fancy computer models that predict how people will vote. So you can then look at a map and you either try to concentrate Democrat votes, like if I'm a Republican, you try to concentrate Democrat votes in the fewest districts possible. That's called packing. So you're like stuffing as many Democrats as you possibly can into one district so they won't affect other districts around them. The other method, depending on your geography, is called cracking, which is where you basically try to have like a smattering of Democrats in each of your red districts, but not so many of them that they can actually impact the outcome of an election. I should be clear, the Democrats do this too, have done this too. Gerrymandering has been around since 1812 when a dude named Elbridge Gerry decided to gerrymander Massachusetts, Boston, and he did it really successfully. And so people said it looked like a salamander, and so they stuck Gary and Mander together. And then through the years, we've just started pronouncing it differently. So it's not new. It's just that with computing power, we have gotten so good at it that they just like surgical precision with those voting map lines to ensure that they keep their power.
Yeah, there's so many questions.
So many. Now you're going to start the nerd out. This is how it begins.
Yeah, this is how well, because I've always looked at these crazy maps, and it's always funny to me. A couple of things about this. One thing that's very funny to me is that it seems like when the other party does it, they call it gerrymandering, and when they're doing it, they call it redistricting. So it's like, depending on which side is doing it is the term that they're using for the thing that they both do. So that's always been kind of funny to me.
Yeah, it is 100% bullshit.
It's all the same thing, just with a different name.
All garbage.
Like, we're redistricting, but then the other party's saying it's gerrymandering and vice versa when they're not in power.
So true.
So that's always been kind of funny and interesting to me. And then the other thing has been the just way these maps end up looking. But what I don't understand is there how does that work for people who have to travel to go vote? So they can just put you in a district even if it's super far away? Because I'm a very dumb person who just assumed districts were drawn up by like, here's a little square where you live and that's your district.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of principles like established through court cases through the years to say what a good district is. And like, districts are hard to draw, frankly, because the goal is to like keep them kind of compact, which is what you're talking about. You don't want somebody to be in a district with somebody who's like 300 miles away, because they're going to have different needs and different interests. You also want to keep, they call them communities of interest together. And so that can look like a whole bunch of different things, but like, foundationally, our voting districts are meant to be drawn in a way that you could elect someone who's likely to represent your needs, to understand your issues, and take those on to Congress or take those on to your state legislature. Because, you know, like, foundationally, our government is meant to represent us. And so our whole job is to try and choose people who will do that. The bigger your district is, the more spread out it is, the less likely you are to be able to choose someone like that. Even if, like, you know, like if you're a farm community, for example, you probably want to elect somebody who understands about farm communities.
Mm-hmm.
But if you spread the district out across like a giant city and a farm community and some sort of, you know, I don't know, like mountainous range, like, those are a lot of different perspectives that need to be represented. So that's kind of why you want them to be tight, and you want to have people with common interests and common needs in the same place. The piece we don't talk about as much is, and this is like my bent, I want districts that are competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think competition is good for democracy. Like, my perspective is that it should be so hard to get to be an elected official. You should have to work so hard. Your constituents should know you. It should be like, go away, Kate, stop knocking on my door. I don't want to see you today. And
Mhm.
instead, what happens in these gerrymandered districts is like the representatives don't show up at all because they don't have to, because they'll get elected no matter what. And that's what we lose when we lose competitive districts.
Mm. So would the goal be to have them be more just even more balanced in general instead of just completely out of whack, or what is it, stacked or packed or
Stacked.
cracked?
I like stacked. So you don't, the goal is that your state legislature, for example, would look kind of like your state.
Mhm.
So in North Carolina, like a purple state, I would want to see a purple state legislature. You would expect like fairly moderate policies to come out of that legislature because they would need to appeal to both Democrat and Republican voters because there's a whole mishmash of us across this state. Instead, what happens is when the districts are drawn like this, the primaries become the real elections.
Mhm.
And so if you are a Republican sitting in a district that's been drawn to be very safely Republican, like the one that I ran in, the only real threat to your job is if somebody runs against you in a primary. And that tends to be from like the more extreme side of your party. So you start trying to move farther and farther right to avoid someone running on the right hand side of you in a primary. And then that means you get extreme policies. So in North Carolina, for example, the woman I ran against just introduced yet another version of what we call the bathroom bill, which specifically targets trans folks' ability to use the bathroom that matches their gender, which is like, first of all, fucking stupid, because what we know from data is it is like more dangerous to be in a bathroom with a Republican legislator than it is with a person who is trans. Um, but also, like, I care about paying teachers more and about public school. And yet, the person who represents me in our state legislature is like spending all of this time and government money on bathrooms. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. And like many of us feel that way. So we keep getting these extreme policies because they are catering to the edges of their party instead of to the majority of us in the middle.
Mhm. Does does the voting reflect that it's a purple state? Like, can you is it not that more people have become red, or you can see once all the votes come in that it's, oh, still a purple state, it's just the way that they've all been district, you can still see that?
Yeah, so that's such a good question. Um, so out of about 5.5 million votes cast in 2024, when we look at all the votes cast for our state legislature, there are 170 state legislative seats. Like 51%, just shy of 51% of those votes were for Democratic state legislature candidates. And just under 50% were for Republican state legislative candidates. So that's like pretty purple, right? We're
Mhm.
basically at 50-50. But when you look at the makeup of our state legislature, it is 2/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat. So that mismatch tells you that you are gerrymandered because
Mm.
like it's sort of normal to be within, you know, a few percentages. Like, you don't expect to see an exact correlation between how many Democratic votes there were and how many Democratic legislators you have, that kind of thing. But those should be pretty close to each other, and we are like wildly out of balance.
And how many states are out of balance like that?
13.
Which, okay, so which are the worst? gerrymandered states?
Yeah, so there are different ways to look at it. North Carolina is definitely one. If you want to look at states that are gerrymandered by Democrats, Illinois is one, New York is one. Ohio is gerrymandered pretty badly, Tennessee, Louisiana, Nevada is gerrymandered, I think, by the Democrats, Florida. I'm like, this is now a quiz. I'm trying to name them all off the top
Oh,
of
yeah, no, don't you
yeah.
don't have to name them.
But it's 13. North Carolina is generally considered the worst because our state Supreme Court has said it's cool.
Uh-huh.
In Ohio, they had a fair map amendment. So basically, like on their ballots in 2024, the citizens could have voted to have an independent commission draw their maps instead of the legislature. But the language on that like ballot amendment wasn't particularly clear and folks didn't really know what they were voting for. And so that didn't pass. So they remain super gerrymandered. Wisconsin is a lot like North Carolina, where they have to go through their Supreme Court, their state Supreme Court, in order to get fair maps. Um, it's different in every state because each state has their own constitution,
Mhm.
and each state, this is like kind of a good thing. Our electoral processes, like there's some things are defined at the federal level, and then others are defined by states themselves. And this is something where, generally speaking, our U.S. Supreme Court says that states should figure it out.
How did you get into this?
Oh, um, this is such a good question. I listened to a podcast in like 2016. I'm a math nerd, and so it's just interesting to me to think about how you would do this well, because it's not easy.
Mhm.
And then through time, I started to really believe that gerrymandering is like one of the root causes of all of the extremism in our
Mm.
country and in our government right now. And that if we had leaders who had to answer to voters, that we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. So, like the real answer of how I got into this is wine. Like standing in line at a festival, like waiting to get a glass of wine, and somebody asked me if I wanted to run for a losing state Senate seat. And, like the wine said yes. And then the next thing I knew, here we are. But
So this was someone who already had started this, like, losing a state Senate seat thing?
no. So, a lot of states do this. North Carolina is one where even though you have all these districts that are basically unwinnable for one party or another, you try to have a candidate from each party on the ballot. So at least there's some kind of choice. Um, and that's hard work because like it kind of sucks to run for office. It takes a lot of effort, and you have to ask your friends and family for money, and you like take a bunch of time. And so it's hard to convince people to do that to lose.
Yeah.
Um, and so they were in sort of a scramble at the end of 2024 looking or 2023 looking for folks who would be willing to run for these loser seats. But nobody had ever run as an actual loser before. And that's what really appealed to me. My background is in behavioral science and persuasive communication. And I was like, I wonder if we could run just a radically transparent campaign and help people figure out how gerrymandering like affects their daily lives and
Mm.
start to care about having fair maps in our state and how we get them and what we need to do to get there.
So, that's really funny. What were you doing before you ran, or what do you do? You said you're in behavioral science. What's your day job, or what was it?
Well, I just quit to do politics full time, which is maybe
Oh
one of the
god.
stupidest decisions I've made in my life, but here we are. Um, I worked at the University of Michigan's remotely, University of Michigan Center for Academic Innovation. And so I would try to understand how people like take in information and then use the way our brains work to, frankly, like get college kids to do their homework or go to class or go to their advisor or get off academic probation, things like that.
Guys, getting older sucks. That's why it's so important to take care of yourself and pay attention to your health. This is something a lot of men ignore, and it is so important. If you hate going to the doctor and dealing with the hassle, we've got the perfect solution for you. With Quest Health's line of tests for men, you can order a multitude of men's health panel tests that keep you informed about your health. You can check your testosterone levels, get a prostate screening, a colorectal screening, or take their comprehensive men's health profile test for a more complete picture of your health and wellness. Purchase lab tests online, visit a nearby Quest Diagnostics location for a sample collection, no doctor's visit required, or get immediate results at home with at-home test kits. Your results are delivered online, quickly, and discreetly. So prioritize your health and visit questhealth.com today. Use the code Phetasy to get 25% off and find answers to the multitude of health questions you may have. That's questhealth.com and use the code Phetasy for 25% off. This is really fascinating because it's one of those fields that, again, I think I probably could have really become obsessed with if I went into it. I just was finishing up a piece right before we came on for Spectator. And I have this theory that, there's always kind of been this idea of two Americas, and the very polarized America that we experience that you talk about, gerrymandering, it's very extreme. And then I actually think the newer, bigger divide, which is what I'm more interested in, is the very online versus the normies who are offline. So I started doing comedy again, and I have a very online audience, and I have a podcast where we do satirical news, and they get a lot of the jokes that I would think were mainstream until I get in front of a mainstream audience, and I'm like, oh, these people have no idea what I'm talking about. And so observing, and I think this election was very much a representation of that as well, where because you have these little silos radicalizing people, because it's not just the gerrymandering is now, I'm realizing, kind of an effect of this, but it's also just the silos we're in are pushing everybody to the extreme, everybody who's too online, and then they think that that's reality, and then normies are like, I don't care. It's like a really fascinating dynamic.
We're just like, whether it's through our voting districts or like what we look at online or what gets recommended to us, just like encasing ourselves in a single worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have my friends who like aren't on social media at all and have given up on the news and all of that. And like their worlds don't look like that.
No.
I'll say it seems way more peaceful.
It is. And it's healthier, I think. So I had this joke about how I'm a geriatric mommy, and I do all these jokes about being a geriatric pregnancy, and then I say, that's very offensive to, like, obviously women love that, and I have all these jokes. I'm like, so they changed it to something less offensive, geriatric birthing person, which I thought people would get because you're online. And I thought people would get it, and I would look at blinking audiences of just crickets, and I'm like, oh, they don't even. It was always, there would be like a cackle of a couple of people, and I started joking like, oh, I can tell who's very online just from who's laughing at this joke. But it was very much, it made me realize how my worldview is so shaped by being very online that I'm not in touch necessarily with what the normies don't know yet, or what I perceive as mainstream is not mainstream at all. I think the left had this very problem for the past really decade. You saw it, just getting kind of high on their own supply and moving further and further left and further away from normie Americans who are like, hey, we don't care about this stuff. We care about this. And you're leaving kind of the working class needs behind and all of these things that they just didn't hear because they were in these silos online,
Yeah.
and it trickled into the politicians somehow, but it wasn't really connected to, like, what people were worried about, and I see this part of why I wrote this piece was I see a little bit of that or the beginnings of that. I'm like, anyone who is online for the past 5 years could have seen that the, new right was ascendant. You could have seen this trending. You wouldn't have been surprised. You could have seen the reaction to the extreme on the left, and now I'm seeing the kind of 2015, I guess 2013 to 2015, like, it feels a little bit like that on the right, where you're seeing the, like, fracturing within the right, and you're seeing, them getting more and more extreme and high and thinking that the mainstream normie Republican is with them, and it's not true. Like, they don't there's, like, another that same dynamic is kind of playing out there. But now it's interesting for me to consider how it plays out in gerrymandering, like you're saying. So it actually does play out on the ground.
Yeah. And they take advantage of the normies not being plugged in.
Mm.
They really whoever's drawing the lines, like I don't care what your party is, whoever
Mhm.
is drawing the lines to try and keep their power is taking advantage of the fact that people are busy and they have to do a lot of different stuff. And if you've always voted Republican, you're pretty likely to keep voting Republican. And if you've always voted Democrat, you're pretty likely to keep voting Democrat. And they just take advantage of our like natural tendencies in our behaviors in order to draw the maps this way. Comedy is such a fascinating window into like all of these silos.
Mhm.
I think is like a really good example of some of the ways that like we screw up messaging on the left so much because they're always looking for one message that'll appeal to everybody. And they're great policies, frankly. Like, who doesn't want to have like teachers paid more money, and who doesn't want to have safe school? Like, a lot of them are like good, bedrock, like blue collar kind of policies.
Yes.
But we
Yes.
get all tangled up in talking about like all like bathrooms or like and we forget to talk about like the economy, farmer economy to farmers and like small business economy to small business owners. You can
Mhm.
have ideas for all of those things, but like the small business owner isn't going to be moved by like some sort of livestock program. I'm making really bad analogies now, but it's like you sort of have to find the audience that matches the thing you want to talk about rather than
Yeah.
just like, let me blast it all into the universe.
Yeah, I have a lot. I mean, it's interesting as someone who is kind of a former lefty who feels like they got I wrote a piece about this. I'm like, I feel like I was a regular at your bar, and then you started just only caring about the hipsters with their craft beers that are infused with THC and started ignoring me. And then, like, you
I just
lose
wanted a Bud
customers.
Light. I just
Yeah.
wanted a Bud Light. Yep.
And then it, so some of the stuff, the, it's like the chicken or egg thing. Some of the
Yeah.
stuff with schools, yeah, I think a lot of people care about paying teachers more, but I don't, if you look at the administrative ballooning costs at all of these schools, I'm like, okay, so maybe everyone doesn't care about teachers paying more because these administrators are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars while teachers' raises don't go up. So I don't know who's in charge of that, but I don't think it's just Republicans or Democrats.
And this is my favorite game because we're going to bring it back to gerrymandering. Like my favorite game to play is
6 degrees
picking
of gerrymandering.
yeah, like let's bring it right on back to how our maps were drawn. Generally speaking, state legislatures are responsible for how education dollars get spent. And so, like in North Carolina, we don't have the same kind of ballooning administrative costs that you're talking about, because they're just taking all the money from public school and moving it into voucher programs.
Mm.
And what's wild is a lot of the folks voting in favor of these voucher programs don't even have schools that would qualify for those vouchers in their districts. So their constituents couldn't even take advantage of the program.
Interesting.
And that's a gerrymandering thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, like, why would you vote to take money out of your own district if not for certainty that you get to keep your seat? Um, but other states, like I know, and I think it's New York, where they do have like large administrative costs associated with their schools, and teachers like make a little bit better money, but it's not enough. Like, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have a 7 and a 9 year old, and I'm not sure we can possibly pay teachers enough. Like, I love my kids with my whole heart, and if you told me I had to homeschool them, I would hit the road. I just like, I don't even know what to do. What to do. So I hold them in very hard teachers in very high regard. But it's like the whole premise of our like democracy is that our opinions should matter, and it should matter that you think the administrative costs are ballooning, and that should be distributed differently, and your leaders should care about that. And like, they should care that I want the teacher down the street to make more money so that I can stay married and keep being a mom. Um, but because of the way my district is drawn, they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem, because we can have a whole range of opinions, and that's beautiful. And there should be some, like common ground ish that we can all sort of come to. And then our leaders are supposed to take that and implement it, but they don't do that. They like spend their time doing things that like don't even help their own voters.
Yeah. I mean, this again is like the offline interacting with the online in ways where they don't everybody's I was just writing about this. Everyone's identity. I don't remember everyone's identity being so political.
Yeah.
It's something and I think social media has aggravated this where it can be your whole personality can be who you listen to, what podcasts you're taking in. I grew up, it's not like media and culture haven't influenced personalities. I'm a 90s kid, so obviously but I was like the big like cultural debate that I grew up with was like the jock versus the nerd.
I was going to
In
say
the
Nirvana versus Pearl Jam. That was
well,
like
that
top.
too. I talk about like the grunge, I always laugh like I would Kurt Cobain be like a reactionary Republican now? I wonder.
Don't you think
Um
he'd be a Bernie bro?
Maybe. I mean
I
that
spent
horseshoe theory swings both ways, you
It's
know?
true. I
He
spent a
probably would
decent
have
amount of
started as a Bernie bro and then
time.
become like a MAGA guy during the lockdowns.
Yeah. That's true. He would not have liked a face mask, I don't think. I spend a dumb amount of time thinking about how Kurt Cobain would react to
A lot of things.
various daily life issues. Yep.
I do too, actually. That's weird.
I wonder if that's like the 90s kid Roman Empire joke.
There definitely it is. It
What would
is
Kurt Cobain do? Yeah.
what would Kurt Cobain do? I do spend like an inordinate amount of time thinking about this in many aspects of my daily life. It's just what would Kurt Cobain think about this right now? I had a joke that was kind of about this, and then I was like, it gets too dark because I'm like, well, he knew, and that's why, So yeah, that's the weird thing too about how all of these things interact online and off is when it's like the culture wars can become part of your personality. You don't like leaders don't actually have to address the things that are bothering their people, and the people don't really notice until it's too late.
Yeah. Yep. So what do we, all right, Bridget, what do we do? Let's solve it in, 5 minutes. What should we do?
Uh yeah, I mean, so tell me about this race that you ran. What was it like when did you go knock on doors and be like, "I'm a loser"? Tell me, like,
That's actually exactly what we did. You would have made a great volunteer. You'd be like, I'm knocking doors for this loser.
I
Um,
will definitely, I mean, I would do it just for the material.
it's a surprisingly good time. Like running for office to win, I think is miserable, and running as a loser is like the best.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't be that way. That's probably another symptom of a whole bunch of problems, but it was a blast. So, I mean, my district is red. We knocked about 15,000 doors,
Wow.
and most of them, you only have so many Democrats you can knock on their door. There are like 12 Democrats in the whole district. So at some point, you are knocking on like independent doors, what we call unaffiliated voter doors. Um, and I only had one door where the guy wouldn't shake my hand. He was from Kentucky, so I'm blaming it on Kentucky. Um, but even then, we talked for like 30 minutes, and by the end, had like found some common ground. He was like, "Yeah, I do think it is crappy that they draw districts to keep their power instead of drawing districts to like listen to voters."
Mhm.
Because basically, like, it's a populist thing, right? I think government should function closer to voters and not have so much distance. Um, People were a little put off by the loser thing. I'm not going to tell you that there were like some people in our state Democratic Party who thought it was terrific. And then there were plenty of other people who were like, what is this woman doing?
Mhm.
Which made it even more fun, frankly. Um, we had a giant party called Democracy Rocks that we called a reverse mullet. So it was like a party in the front and business in the back. And we had an 80s band and barbecue, and like 400 people came and partied with us. And then at the very back of the venue, you could go like talk to some of the candidates who were running for office in the area. Because one of the things that happens in an unwinnable district is that people on your ballot don't show up. So we had a governor's race, attorney general, state treasurer, secretary of agriculture. All of those candidates were out trying to win votes. But like, it's tough to come to a red district where there are 12 Democrats. It's tough to make that a priority. So
Right.
we basically just tried to make a place where those candidates would come and just be, so that the folks who might consider voting for them could come and meet them. And that was a really good time. Um, we did a
So
friendship bracelet thing. It's to like show people that they were connected. We left a bracelet at every door we knocked, whether somebody was home or not. And I was at a town hall like last week, and someone still had their bracelet on, and they came up and we did a selfie. So it's just like really fun community building things. Like if you're going to lose, you can try literally anything.
yeah.
And we learned some stuff.
You might have seen him on Walk-ins Welcome, but have you checked out Brad Palumbo's podcast, Brad versus Everyone? It's a 25-minute daily show where Gen Z journalist Brad Palumbo takes on the craziest ideas on the internet, in media, and in politics. Brad covers stories you won't hear about in mainstream media, from social media trends landing some young people in jail, to the progressive media darling whose public meltdown got her fired, to the TikTok boycott against Target that makes no sense. He also pushes back on far-left extremism in the LGBT community from the perspective of a moderate gay man. But Brad also isn't afraid to disagree with the GOP or push back on far-right commentators who take things too far. Listen to Brad versus Everyone on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. What is it like to knock on doors, and what do you say? I've always wondered, when AOC was running and she was like showing her sneakers, I'm like, isn't that kind of scary? Do people pull guns on you or their dogs?
I mean, I think the answer to all of those questions would be yes. Um, yeah, it's Knocking on doors is such an interesting thing on so many levels. So, first of all, it's like one of the most effective ways to convince somebody to go out and vote is if you can talk
Mm,
to them face to face.
interesting.
Also, horribly inefficient because
Yeah.
most people don't want to answer their door. And so, if you knock 100 doors, you might talk to 5 people.
Why
And
is it one of the most effective ways to get somebody to vote?
I think this goes back to your like spectator online versus normie thing. It's really hard to paint a person with a one-dimensional or two-dimensional brush when you're having a conversation with them.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think so much of what would just help us like as a society right now is to all get together and not talk about politics and instead like talk about what assholes our children are and how much we hate the cafeteria food. Like because the reality is like people in the community have the same kinds of problems and they're facing the same kinds of issues. And when you are talking to someone one on one at a door, it's so much easier to find that common ground than if you're trying to like blast a message to 100,000 people. Um, and so I think that's why it's so effective. It also shows the person whose door you're knocking on that like you legit care about them, like you took the time to come to their door, and that's
Mhm.
meaningful. But again, you're getting like maybe a 4% effectiveness on that, and then horribly, that's like the most effective tool we have to get people to
Right.
vote. Um, So, knocking on a door, I hate it and love it all at the same time. Most of the time, if somebody knocks on my door, I hide so that I don't have to talk to them.
Right.
And there's plenty of that. There's a lot of ring doorbells where you like leave a message on their ring, which is strange
Right.
to do. And then I think it's a little bit different between like a metropolitan, like urban center and like a rural part of the district too. Um, Part of my district, like a little sliver of it, is in this really competitive state house area. And so my house is actually like, I think I got like 5 door knocks in one day once,
Wow.
which is why I don't answer the door. Like, you've got my vote, please leave me alone.
Yeah.
Um, but then my district, which was super not competitive, I would knock on doors, and there was one woman who's 80 years old, lived in the same house since she was 24, and no one had ever knocked on her door. And she was so
Wow.
excited to see me. Like I got a little nervous. She wanted me to like come inside and have lemonade, and literally, I wish this was a joke, like had a basket of puppies, like these cute little English setter puppies. Her dog had just had puppies. And so she was like, come in and have some lemonade and look at my puppies. I felt like it was, when you're a child and they tell you not to take the candy from the man in the white van.
Yeah.
That's what this felt like. But she was just so excited that somebody cared enough to come to her door. So I think there are places where it's useful and places where it's not, just like anything else.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I've always wondered what that's like campaigning is like. It just seems,
Well, come to North Carolina, we have lots of opportunities.
so do you have to live in the district that you run for?
For state legislature, yes. For Congress, like U.S. House of Representatives, no.
Okay.
Also, isn't that dumb? I don't understand that. Nobody's been able to explain that to me.
So when you were running, sorry if I missed this, were you running in a Congress?
State Senate. So
State
state
Senate.
legislature. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So you did have to live in that district?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Got
my district was like, I don't want to make that symbol, like this.
it.
And then there's
That's the onlining of real life.
that is. And then there's the state house district. So this is state senate, and then this is state house, and they overlapped like that much. But this district
Oh.
is crazy competitive. The state house district is
Oh.
crazy competitive. And I happen to live like in the little gap where they overlap.
All this stuff is so wild to me now because they have all the like you said, all the computation. So even the night of the election when Elon was like, "Oh, we've got this," I was like, "They know." They are already seeing all the like certain districts. It's crazy.
Yep.
Like that level of microscopic attention to these tiny little districts that kind of make or break entire states or what, that's also fascinating to me.
And it's all, this is like my behavioral science brain. It's all rooted in people behaving the way we expect them to.
Mm.
And so one of my passion projects is figuring out how to disrupt systems anywhere and everywhere that I can. Because as soon as we start behaving in unexpected ways, those models break. And I feel like our mass modeling of society is like part of the problem. So,
Mhm.
so it's
Sorry,
like,
I just had like an image of you doing like a flash mob dance somewhere.
that would be so fun. We should do that. Like, just like walk out my front door and normally I turn right, guess I'm turning left today. Take that, systems. Even
Mm-hmm.
little things. I just like buy a different brand of peanut butter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's small things where I I just really think that people could be less predictable and we would be way better off.
That's, I mean, good luck with that. My
I
my sister made such a funny insight because we were talking about, that I have a friend, Michael Malice, and he always says, take one red pill, not the whole bottle. This is kind of his like, I love this quote of his.
Yeah,
And
that's a good one.
I've seen a lot of people who have taken the whole bottle, but a lot of it is just because they're radicalizing themselves online without realizing it. And
Yeah.
you're just like liking this and then liking that. And then the next thing you know, you're like, well, why are the Jews everywhere? Whatever. Like, I'm just asking questions, Bridget. You're like, oh shit, you OD'd. You
It's like
OD'd
I'm
on
gonna
red
need to
pills.
vomit up the last 8 pills we took before we
We
can
need some charcoal.
talk. It's so
um,
true. Yeah, it's so true.
and she was like, if we're only being fed what we are liking, aren't we brainwashing ourselves? And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
yes, you are.
Yeah.
And it's, again, this is something I'm just so obsessed with all of this because I'm obsessed with the way that it plays out online and off. I'm obsessed with the way I've been so wrong about things because of preference falsification, just
Uh-huh.
thinking that because my audience or my people around me were all saying one thing, that it was representative of a bigger picture, or there's a distance between the online reality and the offline. So I
Mhm.
think there is like a 5-year, it's like a lag time where you'll see the trends online if you're very online, and they're not going to play out offline and for usually 3 to 5 years, it seems like. So you can feel a little bit crazy in that interim where you feel like, well, this is the normal default reality, but it's actually not at all. You're pretty far away from where the normie is because they're watching true crime and not paying attention to any of this shit.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess like in the comedy space, it means that your geriatric birthing people joke has longevity. Like you can come back to that one in 5 years and the normies will get it finally. But
Yeah,
if, yeah.
yeah. Go on.
Well,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, so much of it is like, I don't know, we could go so deep on how COVID fractured our communities and
I
like,
would love to, because I was just gonna say the other thing that I've been trying to really take into consideration is COVID. So
yeah,
I came into the culture wars, and this is why I want to write a book, because my brain every time I sit down to write basically explodes, and I'm like, I'm trying to work something out, and the only way to do it is to write a book. And I came into the culture wars 2013, 2015, really. I kind of came online after I got sober. And people are like, you sound like someone who just came out of a blackout in the 90s. And I'm like, well, that's basically true. And I was surprised. And I do nothing. I didn't go to college. So I was not privy to a lot of the Like, whatever the millennials were saying online 10 years ago, I was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? This all sounds insane. So it was a very steep learning curve. And and then 5 years in, we had the pandemic. And then there was the reaction to kind of the 5 years prior. So in this like decade that's bookended by Trump, essentially, in the middle of it, you have a pandemic. And I'm like, I know so many people who are still reacting to COVID lockdowns, still react so many things from COVID that they're still reacting to and haven't processed. And the world kind of just wanted to move on and forget it
Yeah.
and put it behind them because I think it was so traumatic for a lot of people. And it's just the way you have to go. But it's still like weirdly playing out in our subconscious and psyche. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I mean, you're like, first of all, exactly right. Trauma is the word. And there's even data around it that a lot of students, and so think about these, 18 to 24-year-old white dudes that everybody is really concerned about right now. A lot of students have legit symptoms of PTSD as a result of basically being yanked out of their school communities and put into online communities with no notice, and like
Mhm.
their parents at stress level 400.
Mhm.
And so we are seeing like trauma responses from a lot of folks. Understandable. Plus, we used to have these really great, at least like my experience, really great neighborhood communities. And maybe you didn't agree about politics with the neighbor two doors down, but like you still went to the block party together, or your kids still played in the backyard or whatever. And COVID drove us inside our homes and drove us online to find that community. And instead of finding community by like happenstance location, we started finding community by common interest. And because of the way those algorithms were feeding content, like common interest started to be these like culture war issues.
Mm.
People were upset because they lost their community, as you should be. And of course you're going to be mad at somebody telling you like, stop complaining, at least you're not dead, like that kind of stuff. The anti-vaxxers got more anti-vax because they found each other and could reinforce those ideas. The like far left got farther left because they could sort of reinforce each other, and we stopped having these infusions of different ways of thinking, and
Mhm.
instead like siloed ourselves. But we did it online, and now that's the habit.
Well, and prior to that, and we also forget about like George Floyd and all that, which happened in the middle of. I mean, we were going through an election, and then it was a crazy time, and
Yeah.
I was doing dumpster fire covering all of this. So we will often go back and watch old dumpster fires. I'm like, people forget how crazy this was. And
Yep.
also, people were getting canceled from like knitting circles for saying something that was pretty minor. So there was like a
Yep.
very leading into that. We were already at like 2017, 2018, 2019, post Trump getting elected. There was, I mean, truly like Trump derangement and I think Trump devotion, which is the other side of it, syndrome will be studied later. And like,
100%.
if there is a future, it will be studied because it is fascinating just how much of reacting to that man or being in support of him can take over someone's entire brain and personality.
Yeah.
And that has been a wild, it's been just all of these things have gone on for this kind of decade, and you had the kind of me, don't forget Me Too leading into 2015, and there was a very kind of, I wrote a piece and I did a video that went massive actually right before the election where I was like, the Democrats Bud Lighted their brand. Like, you went too far and you went into crazy town, like when you're playing yes and in your improv class and you go take the train to Crazy Town and you've alienated men and now you're trying to get men back and in these like kind of ridiculous ways that are actually beyond parody. And you but people have been trying to tell you this and you didn't nobody, you didn't want to listen. And I think there's no, because we also, it's so many problems. No one wants to run for office, not good people, for the reasons that you were talking about. The online world, people who thrive are people who have personality disorders. Generally are the more narcissistic you are, the better you do.
Yeah.
Shamelessness, we live in just an generalized culture of shamelessness. And also, there's some aspect of, if you're, autistic or something like that, you're going to gravitate more towards the places where you can be asocial or parasocial, which is
Yeah.
also a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
And and then it's like so many interacting weird things happening all at once. And then you have the introduction of AI
Yeah.
on top
And
of all this. And people not knowing what's real. And yeah, this is why normies are checking out.
and like more power to them, honestly. This is
So
where I say, like, maybe I should not have quit my job and just like kept that job and checked out instead.
So
Um,
what inspired you? What is it, other than your like Gen X fuck you to authority, or not even authority, like F you to your desire to disrupt the
yeah.
system? What is the, you're a behavioral scientist person. What is driving you? What is, at the root of your mission?
God, I feel like my husband asks me this every time I tell him I have to go out of town for something. He's like, "Why again? Are we doing?"
This is my husband every time I go do comedy. Is like, so this is just for the love of the game, huh?
I
Like,
mean, it kind of is. I am like a relentless optimist. It's one of my best worst traits. If you're an Enneagram person, I don't know if that is you. I'm a type 7, which means that like I simply cannot exist with negative things. I'm working on that. Um, so I really believe that like human beings are better than the way our government is behaving. Um, and I mean, like it is cliche. Like I'm a real power to the people kind of person. Um, and I feel like I can't just leave it like this for my kids. I think if I didn't have kids, I'd be sitting on the coast of New Zealand sipping some kind of beverage and just like scrolling US news as though it were the Real Housewives of Washington D.C. and just
yeah,
be um but I mean we have kids
yeah. I
and
joke about this. I was like, I got to be just like that Gen Xer laughing in the back of the room, like, you guys care. That's so dumb.
yeah, yeah.
And now I'm like, now I have to care.
Before I was like, people are ants, whatever. Like, we're just gonna
Yeah,
do our ant
yeah.
things, and then one day our ant hill is gonna be gone, and that'll be life. And now I like love those stupid fuckers, and I feel like I have to try and do better by them. Um, so that's how I landed here, and I can't do it from within the system. Like that has been clear to me because I think I mean, we're getting like Fight Club now. Like the system is the problem because all
Mhm.
the people that exist inside that system are benefiting from that system. And so if we're looking to them to fix anything, like where's their motivation? Like they're comfortable. And so a lot of what I think about doing is making them uncomfortable because
Mm,
if we're going to be uncomfortable, then they also have to be uncomfortable. And that might just be a vindictive streak. I don't know.
interesting. So when you're running, so when you say you're getting into politics, what are you running for next?
Um, I'm not running right now. I'm helping other people run. So we
Okay.
started something called the Can't Win Victory Fund. And basically, we help people who want to run FU kind of races in these unwinnable districts, and like give them the support that you can't get when you're running for office in an unwinnable district. So there's that. And then, I mean, like talking about AI, a piece of it is trying to understand what AI can do to help us message better, like talk about real issues in a way that people actually want to engage with instead of whatever opportunity economy stuff we like to throw around. And so we train AI models to think like voters, different voting groups, and then show the model what kind of messages we want to run, and then the model predicts how it'll do. Um,
Wow. It's so funny that you have to, like, train robots to tell you how to talk to
I
humans.
know, right?
What the fuck?
If people would answer their damn doors, then, then I could just knock doors and not do it this way. But like, we can't, when you think about it, so in my line, in like the research line of work, we call it social desirability. Like people will answer questions when another human asks those questions in the way they think that person wants to hear. So like if you asked me what my favorite color was, I mean this isn't as hot button. You could say like, what do you think of well, are you voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? That was a classic one. And people want to avoid that conversation. And so
Yeah.
they are likely to just answer however they think you want to hear. And so people are unreliable reporters. But when you look at how folks are engaging with things online, that's pretty revelatory of what is actually going on in their brains. And so
Right.
that's the kind of piece we're trying to get at. But yes, it is incredibly dumb that we have to train a robot to think like a human to teach us how to talk to humans as a human. Just like, welcome to the new millennium, I guess. I don't know.
It reminds me of the John Mulaney bit where he's like, "Now we must pass the robot test," where he's like, "Why do I have a robot asking me
Yes.
to pass some test to prove that it's not a robot?" Like,
Right. Like,
what is
robots recognize each other? Wouldn't it know? I don't. Yeah.
It's so good. Wow, that is, and you are, I did Sarah say you were kind of like going viral on TikTok, or did I misunderstand that?
No, she's right. So let's think. The things that am passionate about are like real life community and disruption. And then my day job is about using robots to help us understand things and being on the internet. So the main reason I've been viral on TikTok first was for the loserdom stuff, because that's, I think, a novel approach, and people were entertained by it and kind of
Mhm.
wanted to see what happened to me. I'm fine. Um, and then most recently, it has been about our like never ending, totally brutal North Carolina state Supreme Court race. I don't know if you've heard about
Mm.
this. So the election was November 5th. State Supreme Court Justice Allison Riggs won in North Carolina. And her opponent, this guy named Jefferson Griffin, is just like relentlessly challenging the validity of votes and voters to try to overturn her win. So she won by
Oh.
734 votes. Like that's how purple North Carolina is. That's out of 5.5 million. And he at first was trying to throw out 68,000 votes because of, frankly, like a nonsense interpretation of Board of Election law.
Mhm.
Um, and then it went through a whole bunch of court stuff. And the North Carolina State Supreme Court, which is again super conservative, was like, well, you can't throw out 60,000 of those, but like, then there are these 8,000 that are questionable, and then we're going to throw out this other almost 300. And so the virality piece has been trying to explain what's going on there and what we can do
Mm.
about it. Because, like, this is another nonpartisan one. Like, if voters can't just, like, these are people who've been voting for decades
Right.
and voted, and their votes counted in every other race on the ballot. And he's trying to say they can't count in his race,
Right.
which is, it feels like that should not be allowed to happen.
Right.
And
It
we need
does feel that
someone
way.
somewhere to come in and be like, Nope. We count legal votes. That's
Yeah.
how it works.
Wow. That sounds like a lot of work.
I'm not a lawyer, and so much of it is trying to understand what's happening and then distill it into the 90 seconds or 3 seconds you get of people's eyeballs. Because it is to me the most important thing that's happening.
Yeah.
It undermines the entire foundation of how our country works if he's allowed to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a test strategy to use other places and other elections. And it's just, yeah.
Got
But the
it.
virality side, the fun piece is that I got to be like 1 degree from Kevin Bacon because Kira Sedgwick reposted something that I made. And so that, like, now my life is complete. So now I really can return to us just being ants. And when our anthill is done, it's done because I had adjacency to Footloose.
Now it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
It
So it
is.
does come back around. We need to get Kevin Bacon into the gerrymandering mission.
Yes, please.
That will be the full culmination of the singularity here
That
from
would
this
be such a
podcast.
fun game. Yes. We can, like, can you connect Kevin Bacon and gerrymandering to an issue in 6 steps or less?
I think
That
you just need to start 6 degrees of gerrymandering and have people send you issues that you connect to gerrymandering in 6 steps or less, and then hopefully with the intention of it getting Kira Sedgwick's attention so that she can then tell her husband
yes.
because
And
it's the
he can
game
want it.
based on him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be the 6 degrees of gerrymandering connected to 6
Kevin.
degrees of Kevin Bacon.
It's
I
like you're a
figured it out.
professional or something, Bridget. I don't know.
I've got it figured out for you. It's the singularity.
Legitimately.
What is your biggest defect of character?
Oh, there's so many. On the small scale, I leave my seltzer water cans all over the place. Car, house, kids' rooms, bathroom, shower, fridge, occasionally. Microwave by accident. So that's like on the small scale. On the big scale, I'm impatient. I
Mm,
don't like waiting around for anything. Change, laundry, groceries, my children.
I am too. And you know what I did this year? I started a garden. And that is teaching me a lot about planting seeds and letting them grow.
Mm. So I started a garden. And the seeds are growing, and so are the weeds. And I just didn't finish the garden. That's just ADHD. Is that what we're calling that?
You've got to focus.
Ah.
It's good for you. Get
Yes.
those kids out there weeding.
Yeah. Yeah. But then they're dirty, and then I have to get them showered, and I'm impatient getting them out of the shower. We're back again.
We're
Um,
back to impatience. I
yes,
get
we're
it.
back to impatience. Although they would be really good gardeners. Maybe I'll send them to your garden.
My garden is very simple because it's our first one. So we started my sister has an insane garden that every year she swears she's done with, and then it gets bigger every year. It's the like classic meme.
Yeah.
And so this year she like it's like it's crazy. It has like trellises and all kinds of like it's lights. It's wild.
Maybe she could just come here.
Yeah,
And
she
then we can
would.
have garden.
She's talk about I mean, she's not ADHD, well, maybe, but she's OCD, so she does, literally her job is, like, being a professional organizer for people, and she's psychotically good at it, but it's, like, in every area of her life, that girl is a genius.
I mean,
Um,
I need her, and I want to know what you're
she'll
growing.
come to North Carolina. She
Oh,
will.
okay, noted. What are you growing in your garden?
We did very simple. So, um, I asked Grok what I should grow as a beginner in Texas, in Central Texas, and it told me to start simply, and my sister did too. And so I'm doing peppers, basil, bush beans, tomatoes. Is that it? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Peppers, tomatoes, yeah, cherry tomatoes, basil,
Yeah.
and green beans, and then some herbs in another one. But
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like, my daughter loves it. She's so crazy for it. She loves seeing it, and she's so excited every time there's like a little tomato, and now there's a little pepper, and she gets to be like, she'll run in and be like, "There's a pepper."
That's
Um,
an awesome way to get kids to eat vegetables too.
She's always loved them. I've been lucky like that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is though. She's really excited. She's like, "We get to have our own tomatoes." So she's very into it. And now, and it has taught me a lot about, I feel like, I don't know if you ever watched Harold and Maude, but I feel like Maude, where she's like, "I just like watching things grow." Like, that's gonna be my elderly era, is gonna be my Maude era. I
My
just like watching things grow.
If you plant mint in a pot, you can watch it grow and you don't have to do anything to take care of
Yeah, no, mint is crazy
it.
invasive. Can't plant that one in the ground.
No, but also grows without any attention or love at all, which
Yeah, it's like a Gen X kid.
it
Like the Gen X of herbs.
is. Yep.
What is your, biggest asset?
Mm. Uh, I'm gonna. Again, I feel like I could say so many. I'm gonna say creativity and courage because I'm plenty scared of things, but I don't let it stop me. Um, and I really love to solve problems in new ways.
I love that.
What's your
And
biggest asset? Do people ask these back to you?
not often, which is
Oh,
great, which I love.
well, tough luck. I want to know.
Sometimes they do. They usually ask me what my biggest they usually, if they do that, ask me back what my biggest defect of character is. They're more curious about that.
Well, I'm really curious at what you kick ass at.
Um, I don't know. I think I have a very healthy sense of humor that has saved me in many dark situations.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's probably a coping mechanism as well, but I think it serves me to try not to take myself or life too seriously.
Yeah.
Like, there's just a little bit of my brain always able to access, like, this is all absurd. Come back to, the moment, and because I'll kind of spin out, and I have to come back and
Tend the garden.
remember, tend the garden, and just laugh at how silly everything is. It's like, I can get a little too, especially having a kid, just worried about
Yeah.
every joke I have kind of goes to like dystopia or apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to keep my sense of humor about that, and hopefully know that I'll have a place in a bunker because I'm funny.
I mean, you can come to my bunker.
Amazing.
We'll
I
deck
need
it
I
out
need a bunker friend.
somehow.
I'm starting a show, another show. I think I put all of my addiction when I got sober into like creating shows.
Uh-huh.
Um So I'm starting another show called Real America, and it's interviewing normies because, like, it's kind of a virtual knocking on doors is how
Yeah.
I want to look at it, where I'm just talking to, because I think in our bubble, in my bubble, it's like all the same people. It just gets to be like a circle jerk, and
Yes.
I want to know what's going on top of mind for just, people who consume a lot of this content and are just out there in different topics. So I'd love to have you on when we do an episode about voting and gerrymandering or something.
I also really want to listen to that. I feel like I would learn a lot.
Yeah, I think it will. I'm hoping it will be good for also people who are just really trying to get in. I want to know what's top of mind for, like,
Yeah.
the kind of ethos of it is, I worked in restaurants many years. I was a waitress forever. I would talk to all my customers, and no one's ever talking. people talk about politics, yes, but top of mind is usually someone sick, what's going on with their kids, what's going on at their school, something's going on in their neighborhood that they don't like, something's going what's going on at work, they've been laid off, what's going on with their money. It's not usually like these things that we're all focused on when you actually drill down and talk to individuals. So that's what I want to hear. It's like, how are you doing? My question is like, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
I want to know. So
I'm excited about that. Okay.
I am too. So where can we find you?
You can find me on all of the internet social media platforms at either Kate Barr Can't Win or Can't Win Victory Fund. And we're at can'twinvictoryfund.com. And I always have to say, if anybody out there wants to run as a loser, we have a whole form. Come fill it out. We would love to support you, like doing the damn thing in your community.
That's so cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on my podcast. Thank you so much. I'm glad we can make this work.
Last.
Yeah, it was so fun. Please keep in touch with me and I will let you know. I think our show is launching May 12th, but I'll let you know when I know for sure.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's soon. Yeah, it's soon.
That's amazing.
We just are kind of announcing it, so it's exciting. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. This was really fun.
It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
The check-in with Bridget and Cousin Maggie can now be found at Phetasy.com. It's been titled Another Round with Bridget Phetasy, and it's now in video.
This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.